Hello and welcome to World News on the Hour here on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. Today, Poland takes its turn at the rotating presidency of the Council of the European Union. This comes at a time of many international challenges, which the Polish delegation will need to address during its tenure. More on that in just a second, but first, tonight's headlines. Romania and Bulgaria join the borderless Schengen zone after 13 years of waiting. Ukraine stops transit of Russian gas to the EU. We will also talk about the most popular New Year's resolutions. Poland takes over the rotating EU presidency from January 2025, stepping into a critical role at a time of geopolitical tensions and pressing challenges for the bloc. With an ambitious agenda focused on Ukraine, security and resilience, all eyes are on Warsaw. Our European Affairs correspondent Sasha Farbach reports from Brussels.
Geopolitical tensions abound from China and to Russia and everything in between. Also, challenges of how to keep the economy moving across the European Union. Now, Poland has been thrust into the spotlight, taking over the rotating presidency of the EU Council from January. But this has not dulled its ambitions. It's an agenda fully looking at how to bolster more on defense, providing more defense support and political support for Ukraine, and also bolstering the resilience of Europe as a whole. Now, there are many challenges, and this is a time to reshape policy at a key role in Europe. And now the question is, can Warsaw deliver on that in the next 6 months?
It won't be a presidency of business as usual. We need a strategic shift in thinking among all the members of the European Union and among the leaders.
Poland's leadership will play a vital role in advancing legislative priorities, coordinating responses to crises, and ensuring cohesion across the bloc. Much will need to be done, but the mood is already very positive, according to Kaja Kallas, the EU's chief diplomat.
High expectations for Polish presidency. I have already talked with the foreign minister Sikorski as well, what we can do together in terms of developing Europe further and also to doing things for our own defense.
Leadership will be needed at a time when the EU faces internal divisions on issues like migration and economic governance, while external threats, including disinformation and hybrid warfare, grow. Simultaneously, Europe must navigate an unpredictable transatlantic relationship, with Trump's shifting policies raising concerns over NATO cohesion and U.S. support for European defense.
I have actually two principal expectations. One is exactly related with the maintaining the support of the European Union for Ukraine and delivering the message, and not only political messages through conference or press conference, but also to effective support in the field with money, with resources, with equipment, with all it was promised for the Ukrainians to continuing standing in front of the Russian aggression. The second one is related in a way with the enlargement process, because this new commission also addressed this issue, and Moldova is a country having done spectacular progress on this path, and I hope that the Polish presidency of the Council will encourage and will support this Moldova in accession process.
Warsaw's presidency brings bold priorities aimed at reshaping the bloc's future. A major focus will be unwavering support for Ukraine through military aid and moving Kyiv closer to EU membership. The message will be loud and clear. Alongside tougher sanctions on Russia and Belarus, Warsaw believes this is essential in ensuring European unity.
We need to find more common thinking on defense spending. So pretty much more money about protection of the borders, external borders of the EU, because either we will have safe external borders or the borders within Europe will reappear, and about common purchasing of ammunition and other military equipment, because it simply makes sense.
The first 6 months of 2025 offer Poland a chance to lead at a pivotal moment for the EU, with a focus on Ukraine, resilience against authoritarian regimes, and bolstering European security. Warsaw aims to make a lasting mark. Its ability to unite member states during this volatile era will be closely watched. Sasha Farbach for TVP World in Brussels.
At long last, starting today, Romania and Bulgaria are fully part of the Schengen zone, which means no more waiting at land border crossings. It follows years of foot-dragging, haggling and a good deal of patience. Michel van Blomstein has more.
They brought out the fanfare, and for good reason. Romania and Bulgaria are now not only members of the EU, but of the Schengen area as well. The air and sea borders were already included in the free travel zone, but now so are the land borders.
I'm from Blagoevgrad and I came here especially for this historic year for Bulgaria to see if everything is as they said it would be on TV with Schengen and free movement at the border.
Congratulations to both countries. You have shown vision, patience and determination. You belong in Schengen.
Accession negotiations have been tough for the European Union's two poorest member states. Since joining the EU in 2007, Bulgaria and Romania have faced opposition from other countries, particularly Austria and the Netherlands, riding on anti-immigrant sentiments. Both countries eventually dropped their opposition, with Austria doing so in November. The most noticeable difference is that queues such as these will no longer bother travelers and transporters, much to the joy of motorists and truckers.
This should have been done a long time ago, a very long time ago. The Austrians kept us out for nothing. For truckers, this is normal, and this normalcy should have happened 10 years ago. There will be no more delays, no additional costs.
Removing queues at the border does more than spare the patience of those waiting. According to a study for the European Council, Bulgaria loses more than 800 million euros due to waiting times for trucks. For Romania, the estimate is even closer to 2.5 billion euros for truck delays alone.
They used to queue 25 kilometers medium every single day. I mean, imagine.
Joining Schengen is also of profound symbolic importance for the two countries. Former diplomat Eusebio Slavitescu points out that they both have been meeting all the requirements set by the European Commission since 2011.
It wasn't such a big deal for other countries, right? For Romania and Bulgaria specifically, it became a big deal because of the humiliations.
But while the borders with Romania and Bulgaria are now open, the debate over border controls is far from over. In the past year alone, Germany, the Netherlands and France have reintroduced partial border controls. How permanent they will be remains to be seen.
The Ukrainian government has halted Russian natural gas supplies transiting through Ukraine as the 5-year agreement between Kyiv and Moscow expired on the first day of the new year. Our Ukraine correspondent, Oz Chatterjee, joins us now from Kyiv. Hello, Oz. What can you tell us about this decision and what impact will it have on Europe?
Good evening. Well, as expected and as promised, Ukraine has indeed halted gas supplies coming from Russia, transiting through Ukraine into Europe. Now, this is significant. It's been causing consternation with the countries that receive that gas. It amounted to about 5% of the Russian gas, 5% of Europe's gas coming into Europe and mainly catering to Austria, Hungary and Slovakia. And there's been a major dispute between Kyiv and Slovakia about this, particularly with Robert Fico coming out quite strongly, promising retaliatory measures if Kyiv followed through. While Kyiv has followed through now, the Energy Ministry publishing saying it was in the interests of national security. Zelensky also made comments about this, saying Moscow was turning energy into a weapon. He had some critical remarks, calling it the hysteria of politicians who prefer the mafia-style energy mafia that Putin is running. And say in this statement, Zelensky said, when Putin was presented with the Russian presidency more than 25 years ago, the annual gas transit through Ukraine to Europe totaled more than 130 billion cubic meters. Today, it equals zero. This is one of Moscow's biggest defeats. Indeed, this deal was worth at least $5 billion per annum to Russia. It was thought to be worth about 800 million to Ukraine each year. So they're going to be losing from this as well, but not as much as Russia's state energy company, Gazprom, is going to be losing from this. Now, there is still one more route into Europe. That's the Turk Stream pipeline that facilitates Russian gas into Europe. But as far as Ukraine is concerned, that's it. The deal has not been renewed, the 5-year deal. And going forward, Russian gas is not going to transit through Europe. How that affects Europe remains to be seen, whether that will drive up gas prices, energy prices in general, whether that's going to cause more problems, more friction between Fico and Zelensky, that remains to be seen. But for now, all we can see is that Ukraine definitely has followed through and that Russian gas is no longer transiting through Ukraine as the 3-year mark of the war approaches. Back to you in the studio.
Many thanks for that, Oz, and stay safe. The new year brings new political events, including presidential elections in Poland, scheduled for May 2025. What can be expected from the upcoming presidential vote? Sonia Agata-Biskan has more.
With the Polish presidential elections due in under 6 months, December polls already show leading candidates. Warsaw Mayor Rafał Trzaskowski from the centrist Civic Coalition is coming in first, followed by Karol Nawrocki backed by right-wing Law and Justice, Sławomir Mencen from the far-right Confederation, and Szymon Hołownia, Speaker of the Parliament, hailing from the Third Way. If none of the candidates reach the 50% threshold in the first round, based on the polls, we could expect a political showdown between Trzaskowski and Nawrocki in the second round. Some of the priorities of Trzaskowski's campaign include strengthening aid for Ukraine, increasing defense spending, tackling inflation, and ending the near-total abortion ban in the country.
I'm convinced that we are emerging from these primaries strengthened. All of us are emerging strengthened. I have a very strong mandate and a lot of energy, determination, and courage to win with the Law and Justice Party.
Nawrocki, the head of Poland's Institute of National Remembrance, plans to focus on local Polish affairs, national security, economy, and ending the internal political conflict that has left the country split into 2 hostile camps.
I've come a long way, dear ladies and gentlemen, to be here with you today and to be able to say with full confidence that I am ready to represent all Poles.
While Nawrocki claims to be an independent candidate, the strong backing of Law and Justice he enjoys casts doubt on the extent of this independence.
Karol Nawrocki pretends to be independent, but obviously he's even further from independence probably than Rafał Trzaskowski, in a sense that Donald Tusk might actually be afraid of Rafał Trzaskowski getting independent after becoming a president, while with Karol Nawrocki, there's absolutely no doubt he will be just a tool in the hands of Jarosław Kaczyński.
The particular significance of these elections seems to lie in the dynamic between the future president and the present government. Current President Andrzej Duda, affiliated with the previously ruling Law and Justice Party, holds veto power that can hinder the present government's ability to legislate effectively.
If it's a president that comes from the democratic surroundings, and in this case, the candidate which can be considered as such is Rafał Trzaskowski, then we may expect, first of all, finishing those reforms and bringing Poland fully back to the road towards democracy, full and responsible participation in all the actions of the European Union.
Amid continued Russian aggression and challenging economic conditions, voters are likely to prioritize security and the potential for a rising standard of living when deciding on their preferred candidate. Szymon Hołownia, the parliament speaker and a presidential candidate himself, will announce the exact date of the presidential elections on January 8, 2025.
Any news recap of 2024 for Poland would not be complete without mentioning the September floods that ravaged southwestern Poland. Now, more than 3 months later, the situation in the affected areas is still difficult. Some businesses have managed to rebuild, one of them a bakery in Strony Swansky, which plans to reopen soon. Our reporter, Vidya saw the bakery right after the flood and now visited it again over 3 months later. Here's his report.
One of the most traumatic moments of 2024 in Poland. A devastating flood in the southwestern part of the country. The mountain town of Stronie Śląskie was among those hit the hardest by the disaster.
When I was fleeing, the water was up to my waist. Firemen just drove around telling people to run. No one helped us. We had to pull ourselves out, and only then did the firefighters pick us up.
Our crew was there to see the impact of the water firsthand. We visited a bakery devastated by the flood. The building itself was untouched, but inside, the water spared nothing. Everything had to go, including the tiling on the walls.
The whole heart of the place is gone. The ovens, all of the machines we used to bake bread and pastries. 15 minutes and our world was basically gone.
More than 3 months later, we visited the same bakery. The place has changed beyond recognition. Now it's waiting for new ovens and other equipment. The bakery has no shortage of work almost round the clock. During our visit, the bakery received a delivery of bread baskets, which we helped unload.
We can talk about all this a little more calmly, but at first we were in complete shock. We had to think hard about what the future will look like.
With the help of other companies and donations from regular people, the bakery is on track to reopen soon.
We now see a light at the end of the tunnel, that with some help we'll be able to rebuild. Plus, we found a lot of motivation in the fact that the people really want us to come back. Many customers asked us whether we'll be taking orders for holiday cakes and pastries. Unfortunately, there were complications like delays in machine deliveries due to the washed-out roads. But I think we'll be back on for Fat Thursday.
Fat Thursday is a Polish pre-Lenten tradition that sees people feasting on sweets. First and foremost, the world-famous donuts known as pączki. Next year, Fat Thursday falls on February 27th. And since donuts are a specialty of the bakery, the owners believe that they will be ready to take orders by then.
As the year 2024 has passed into history, it's time to reflect on the most significant sporting events involving Polish athletes. While the year may not have been the most successful overall, there were moments that will undoubtedly be remembered as milestones in the history of Polish sports. Jan Kennedy has more.
This year, all eyes of sports enthusiasts were on the 2024 Summer Olympic Games in Paris. And it's safe to say that speed climber Aleksandra Mirosław stole the spotlight in Polish sport by winning Poland's only Olympic gold, solidifying her place as the fastest female climber ever.
Many times I've been in first place, and many times I've heard the Polish national anthem, but this moment was truly unique for me.
Poland's men's volleyball team fell short in their final against the reigning champions, France. However, they left Paris with their heads held high, securing the second Olympic medal in the history of Polish men's volleyball.
We fought until the very end and gave everything we had today, but it wasn't enough. As I always say, we didn't lose to an exceptional French team, but to a team that played decently.
Having secured her 5th Grand Slam title and 3rd consecutive French Open, Iga Świątek, widely regarded as the best Polish female tennis player in history, took home the Olympic bronze.
I'm very proud of myself that I managed to win the bronze medal. It is certainly a dream come true. It is known that I wanted the gold and that everyone wanted gold, but you can't have everything.
This underperformance, as some called it, speaks volumes about the expectations surrounding the 23-year-old. Despite these remarkable achievements, altogether Polish Olympians won 10 medals, placing them 42nd in the overall rankings, the country's lowest tally in more than 70 years. Polish cycling fans, meanwhile, had plenty to celebrate when Niewiadoma became the first Polish woman to win the Tour de France, regarded as the sport's most prestigious contest. In another successful year for one of Poland's most beloved sports, Speedway, Bartosz Zmarzlik secured his 5th World Championship and is on track to break the record for the most titles. Poland's national football team gave fans a glimmer of hope by qualifying for the 2024 European Championship through the playoffs. However, drawn into one of the toughest groups of the tournament, the White and Reds were sent home from Germany after the group stage with only 1 point to their name.
We gave our all until the very end, but our opponents were tough. It was a challenging game for us. There were moments when we played well, and that's the kind of football we want to play.
Unfortunately, there was little improvement in Poland's performance in the Nations League, where they were relegated to Division B. But while the national team captain Robert Lewandowski struggled to find his best form in the national jersey, he became the 3rd player in Champions League history to reach 100 goals.
He became the 3rd player in Champions League history to reach 100 goals.
Another positive note for Polish football: the women's national team secured a place in the 2025 European Championship, eliminating the Austrians and leaving hope for more success in the coming year.
New year, new me. Every year, billions of people around the world make resolutions, setting goals they hope to achieve before the year ends. Our reporter Gabriela Fesnak asked some New Year's Eve partygoers about their plans to better themselves in the coming 12 months.
As the new year begins, many people feel the need to make a fresh start and commit to change.
It's best to set realistic goals that we want to achieve within a certain time frame, and most importantly, that are attractive to us so that we feel motivated to strive for them.
Traditionally, New Year resolutions had a lot to do with health and fitness goals, career advancement and overall personal development. But the 2025 trends appear to be different.
I hope to finish my studies, better job, better bike, and lots of more adventures and traveling on 2 wheels.
I'm planning to ride even more and get better at the track days with my bike. And I'm hoping to find a job.
We have, I think, resolutions together, as we want to live together and everything, and I don't know, to work and to have good relationships and to enjoy life.
Brak.
I don't have any.
To have a good time and lots of money.
We're going to get married.
Yes.
So that's our big party. So we're trying to plan a wedding.
Some people are, however, still sticking to more traditional resolutions.
I want to quit smoking.
My resolutions is to be a better person for the next year.
Whether it's focusing on personal development or trying to travel more, the hardest part of New Year's resolutions is, without a doubt, trying to keep them.
2024 was a remarkable year for elections as voters in more than 60 countries around the world. It also turned out to be a difficult year for incumbents and traditional political parties. TVP World's Ben Lee sat down to discuss these issues with Joshua Bergen, Programme Coordinator at the Warsaw Security Forum.
Now, 2024 was a year of extraordinary political disruption, with over 60 nations heading to the polls. From the return of Donald Trump in the United States to right-wing gains in Europe and contested elections in countries like Romania and Georgia, the year was marked by voter frustration with the political status quo. How will these elections shape global geopolitics, particularly in our region? Well, joining us on TVP World to analyze these trends is Joshua Bergen, Program Coordinator at the Warsaw Security Forum. Hello, sir, and welcome to TVP World.
I'll be back, Ben. Thanks for having me on World Talks.
So I think the burning question everyone have on their mind is with the return of the U.S. President Donald Trump. What are some of the implications does this have for Europe as a whole, as well as NATO?
Well, let's step back just a bit and look at the previous Biden administration as effectively the third term of Barack Obama. It is incredibly rare for a U.S. vice president to be ultimately elected president. And so that tenure has come and gone. Trump's return is going to be a return to his calls for the European Union and European member states to step up and begin engaging with their own defense. I don't think that's a non-optional question for him. I know there's lots of rhetoric about America pulling out of NATO. I believe this is a red herring. I don't think that's real, but I do think that a Trump administration is going to more or less demand European member states and certainly NATO member states to step up their own defense spending. This is not payments to NATO, it's not payments to the United States, but it's internal domestic spending on defense by each of the member partner countries. This is a matter of treaty, and I think that the U.S. government is going to expect that going forward.
All right. How do you think the European nations will be able to adapt to it? Because if we observe kind of European politics, they do, well, kind of operate in a way that they're projecting a Democratic Party victory in the presidential election. Do you think that it's, the European Union will be able to make this whole U-turn quick enough?
Well, I think Europe generally was sort of existing in the same space as much of American elites who were sort of wishfully thinking that Kamala was going to win, not looking beneath the surface. It was obvious if you looked at the tea leaves, if you dug into state-level data, but the high-level polls and some of the wishful thinking polls left them to believe something that simply wasn't so. As a matter of European economies, they have for a long time rested on the notion that they didn't have to engage because America was going to come to the rescue. Poland, for instance, Romania, for instance, Greece, for instance, have consistently met and exceeded their NATO minimum spending, and in many cases have gone beyond. And frankly speaking, I think that's the expectation that America has, that the new administration is going to have for classic states like France, Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium. Each of these rich countries in Western Europe with agency need to retool their economies in a way to where they can do that. And I don't think the administration is going to have much sympathy if they don't.
Do you think the European countries, especially places like Germany and France, have the political will to do so, seeing that they're already not doing so hot when it comes to their polling numbers, and with the political instability situation going on, they're asking to put more funding into security and defense? Will that bode well with their electorate?
Well, you raise good points. Both Germany and France are politically unstable right now. Nevertheless, this being so, I don't think that the administration is going to sort of back down or take a lot of that into consideration. At the end of the day, hard choices are required. When you look at the fact that Russia, an economy that's on par with Italy, is able to menace a 500 million member strong society in Europe, and that European member states are simply unwilling by simply dithering too much meeting and too little action, I think the expectation at this point is it's time to go from being a teenager politically in terms of defense and security to a mature adult. And mature adults go ahead and take care of things like locking the house, making sure that you have security alarms, making sure in jurisdictions where it's permissible, you might have weaponry in the home. I know I'm sort of comparing this to a household analogy, but this is sort of where I see it. It's a matter of sort of mature societies that have been operating on a post-war environment that allowed them a lot of space, a lot of leash, and now it's time to grow up and take responsibility for things they have previously committed to in writing.
And do you think that's going to be the direction that European Union or European nations go towards in the year 2025?
Well, I would certainly hope so. Obviously, these are things that will be difficult. There'll be difficult conversations, and I'm certain that the administration, both directly through the president and many interlocutors, will be pushing on European partner countries to go ahead and do what they previously committed to do in writing.
All right, and speaking of polling getting it very wrong and global elections, we're also trying to focus on the situation in Romania as well. We saw the first round of election with the strong performance by far-right parties, and then there's, of course, accusations of foreign interference. What do these developments signal for the region's stability?
Well, I think there's a couple things at play. Russia has long engaged in dis and misinformation around the globe. This is not new. It's new in terms of it's very buzzy and fun to talk about in the modern sense. There's lots of money to sort of counteract these things. But Russia's been doing this throughout the Soviet period, using newspapers, magazines, gaining sympathy across Europe. And so nothing has changed here. What has changed is the absolute number of media outlets and sources. If we go back just 30 years, you and I grew up in a world where we had probably 3 to 5 television stations. We now have hundreds. We have the internet, and so they're utilizing all these tools, both in Romania, in Romania and other countries in Europe, to go ahead and activate dissatisfaction. Dissatisfaction exists. Much of the world has seen manufacturing jobs shed to places like China. We have economies in places now that don't serve the middle classes, and so there's dissatisfaction that's much more easy to stoke when you have a society that's on the margins and has proactively been doing this for the better part of 70 years.
Is there also a little bit of oversight on Romania's part in kind of realizing that these kind of disinformation or these campaigns have been taking place, as the first round really do come as a surprise? Some people are saying that these candidate isn't even on the radar. Some pollings don't even take the candidate into account. Sure, we can all chuck that up to Russian interference or disinformation, misinformation, but the fact that it is there and it's not even brought to the foreground, does it imply also some sort of disconnect between the electorate and their government as a whole?
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at the two sort of mainstream parties in Romania, they'd engaged in a power-sharing deal for the past few years, and frankly, much of the electorate looked at that with a great deal of dissatisfaction. If you go out there and you work hard for a party, and then that party goes ahead and engages in effectively a bargain with the opposing party, the largest opposing party, it starts to feel like you're not voting for your party at all. You're voting for the elites, and this doesn't play well in any part of the Western world. It certainly didn't play well in the United States, as we've seen past engagements of similar sort of ilk, and elites that were simply disconnected with middle America. I think Romania is feeling that in spades, and the notion that indeed Georgescu was polling at 4%, I think that's genuinely real. Many of my Romanian friends didn't even have him on their radar. Nevertheless, the outcome and then ultimately the investigation that revealed how heavily external influences and illegal spending was engaged in sort of motivating voters on his behalf through vehicles like TikTok. Obviously, they were not aware and not sort of fully engaged with where the electorate was and how means of disinformation were being used to move voters away from classical mainstream parties.
Thank you so much for your input, insight, and analysis. Really appreciate it, Josh, and thanks for being with us on TVP World.
Great to see you today, Ben.
Cheers.
That was Ben Lee talking to Joshua Bergen. That's all from us in this bulletin, but we will be back on the hour. Goodbye.